folks, welcome to another Patreon special missions request. This one is from General Level Patron Hill2, and it is for my top 5 favorite video games. So I decided to do this top 5 list of top 5 all-time video games, and since I'm a big retro nerd, it's going to be all retro games, classic games. So they're not only going to be 80s games though. A couple of them are from the 90s as well, but I'm going to start off the list with one of my favorite punch and kick video games, Streets of Rage 2 for the Sega Genesis. I love the original one that came out for Genesis in '91, and then a year later I was blown away by the improvements of the sequel. There were more characters to choose from, more moves, unique moves to every character. The music was such a huge part of the original Streets of Rage, and the music in the sequel was almost as good. I wouldn't say better because the music in the first one is still pretty good, but I just loved the second one, and a huge thing for me was the two-player cooperative play. So I've never really been much for competition. I don't like pounding on my friends in video games. I prefer to work cooperatively, so Streets of Rage was an awesome Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat type of game where you could actually employ all of those different fighting moves, punches, kicks, jumping, special attacks, with a partner to team up against gangs, evil guys, and so it was just tons of fun, lots of replay value. The third one that came out was kind of a letdown. I was expecting as big a jump from 2 to 3 as 1 to 2 was, and part 3 just felt more like a step back, but part 2 still a fantastic game. I don't play video games very much anymore, but whenever I feel like just walking some streets and doing a little punching and kicking, Streets of Rage 2 is my go-to game for that. And speaking of games that got better with the second entry in the series, Super Empire Strikes Back for the Nintendo Entertainment System is number 2 on this list, which is in no particular order as always. Really enjoyed the first Super Star Wars game, especially back in the day when I was first really starting to get passionate about Star Wars, but there were no Star Wars figures around, there were no retro conventions where you could pick up old figures, they weren't making new figures, there wasn't much new Star Wars merchandise out there. So if you wanted to immerse yourself in Star Wars, this was it, the Super Nintendo video games. And Empire Strikes Back was amazing. It was able to use all of the technological advancements of the Super Nintendo, like Mode 7, which allowed things to come towards you on the screen, like a Star Destroyer flying right at you. And it's basically very similar to the first game, but so many improvements, better lightsaber handling. I don't know if the graphics were better, maybe just marginally. They wanted to keep it looking like the first one so that it would blend with the first one. You'd be able to somewhat seamlessly go from the first game to the second game, much like the movies. And just a ton of fun. Not all that much thought required. It's a jump and slash or jump and shoot type of video game. Pick up the hearts, pick up detonators, gather points. And another cool improvement was that you could ride a tauntaun. So cool. Other little graphic improvements like snow for the Hoth levels, flying on the screen. Lots of busy stuff going on. Video games didn't do this at the time. We were all very used to the Atari and the Nintendo Entertainment System, so something this graphically busy and intense, this many enemies on the screen attacking you, it was really exciting and super fun to play. And also followed the movie closely enough that it felt like you were going on an actual journey instead of just random levels that really didn't have anything to do with each other. And like Streets of Rage, you could change characters as the game progressed, so you could play the Luke levels on the planets that he was on, like Hoth and Dagobah, and you could also change to Han Solo on Bespin and so on. So I've listed a Sega Genesis video game, and I've listed a Super Nintendo video game. I have to include an NES game on this list as well, one of the best video game systems ever, and one of my favorite games on the NES was Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. So I never actually had the original Zelda game, but when I picked up the sequel, it was It was so much fun because it was a blend of another game I loved, Super Mario, and the original Zelda game. A whole bunch of different things going on at the same time. So if you want to jump and slash, if you want to traverse a map and look for lost treasures, hidden things, secrets, you can do that as well. And another really great part of Zelda 2 is that you could also go into towns and talk to people. So it wasn't just non-stop slashing and jumping like the Super Star Wars games, but you could actually take a breather like an RPG. Go in, talk to people, replenish your life, replenish your magic, get advice on what to do, and just relax, enjoy yourself, enjoy the world that you're immersed in. So Zelda 2, another one of my favorite all-time video games. Had a chance to play it all the way through recently and just had a blast going through the whole thing. A lot of it came back to me. A lot of the tricks that you have to do, a lot of the items and magical potions that you need in order to progress. Super fun game. All these years later just proves that it's not really about the graphics, it's about the immersion, the feeling, the fun and the passion that goes into these things. So that's a Genesis game, a Super Nintendo, and an NES game. Gotta mention an arcade game, and my favorite arcade game of all time is WWF Wrestle Fest. So I wasn't very good at the first WWF arcade game, Superstars, and there wasn't really much to it. That was more of like a simple punch and kick and suplex body slam game. WrestleFest really raised the bar because not only could you just wrestle a typical, well, I guess it wasn't one-on-one, it was all tag matches, 2-on-2 in the Saturday night's main event option, but you could also wrestle in the Royal Rumble Battle Royal, and there were a number of superstars to choose from, the biggest stars of the time, and for this video, there's only one choice that I can go with. It's G.I. Joe, America's hero, Yo Joe! Sergeant Slaughter. Such a blast playing this, not only at the arcade, but the supermarket that my mom always used to go to nearby had one as well, and I got so good at this video game. I remember being able to play like a half hour on a quarter. Just amazing to be able to play an entire shopping trip with 1 quarter while my mom was out grocery shopping, and I was just ruling the ring with the Sarge and the Ultimate Warrior. Super fun game, still fun to play to this day. Not as graphically realistic as some of the newer WWE games, but this is how I like my wrestling games. Super Fire Pro Wrestling kind of captures that look and feel as well. It has a lot of impact and is just so much fun to play. And number 5 on the list of my top 5 all-time favorite video games is Metal Gear Solid for the PlayStation 1. Now, I thought about adding one of the later entries because I really loved Metal Gear Solid 3 and Metal Gear Solid 4.
Got it.
And then there's the original for Nintendo, but I have to go with the PS1 version because when I played the original one on Nintendo, I really enjoyed it, really liked it, but I wasn't absolutely crazy about it. When I played the PlayStation version, that's when my passion for Metal Gear Solid really went through the roof. This was, the term game changer is used a lot, but Metal Gear Solid 1 is the proverbial game changer. Nothing like it had ever existed before. You got to play a movie, a story unfolded as you played it, and it wasn't just one of those choose your answer type of stories where you select a response. You got to actually control Solid Snake through all of the different challenges throughout the game. There was a communicator where you can get advice from all sorts of different people helping you on your mission, and the point of the whole game was stealth, espionage. So while most video games were all about jumping and kicking and smashing and shooting and blowing things up, Metal Gear Solid often penalized you for being noticed. So you had to sneak around, and if your character made noise, the enemy could hear you. They would become inquisitive and curious. They would hear splashes on the water or knocking, different types of noises like that, and you had to evade them if possible. You could go through there guns blazing, but it was so much more challenging. and rewarding if you snuck through unseen. And it's that atmosphere that was created in Metal Gear Solid 1 that I always remember whenever I play the subsequent games. And it really is the measuring stick by which I judge all of the other games as well. Going through these classics has actually been really fun. I'm all about that time travel, going back in time to enjoy the magic of yesteryear, and these games still have that original magic, so I think I'll be doing more of these classic reviews and walkthroughs. If you'd like to share your top 5 video games, scroll down and go to town. And to join the tribe, hit subscribe. Nerdmastay.